I got a 22% on a quiz based on the product that I myself designed and programmed from scratch. Today we're going to be taking a look at the recently released MiniMax Agent Desktop application, which is almost like having a super intelligent AI intern on our local machine. This is powered by MiniMax M2.1, which a lot of folks are familiar with, as it does have a lot of prowess in coding and agentic working fashion. Now, beyond that, something cool about this is it just enables a lot of productivity, and we're going to highlight that in today's video because there is a specific task that I have in mind that I am very eager to see how this performs in, which is going to essentially culminate in using some files on our local system, understanding what they are. We'll use the experts feature that we see right here in the left-hand menu bar, and that's going to help us actually create the end result that I have in mind for the specific set of files we're going to be giving this desktop app. So with that, let's get into it. We'll start with talking a little bit about this and some of its capabilities, and in addition to that, I do want to say thank you to MiniMax because they were kind enough to sponsor the channel and allow me to do this video. So with that, let's jump right into it. To quickly touch upon the availability of this specific application, we can see on the downloads page that it is available for both Mac and Windows, which is nice to see, being that a lot of tools that are coming out from big labs seemingly are Mac first, and sometimes the Windows support lags so long it doesn't seem like it will ever get there, but it's cool to see that we do have a Windows download option. But more interestingly, and something I'm happy to see, is that not only are Apple Silicon machines supported, which is denoted by this ARM in parentheses right here, but older Intel Macs also have support, and a lot of folks are probably still using those, myself included. I have one lying around for some backup and legacy software use, so it's good to see as well right there. And then of course we have iOS and Android capability, but more importantly, and something a lot of folks will just want to use this with, is through the web, which we can see I do have it open right here in this tab. Now we see with this tab open in the web interface, a lot of my task history with MiniMax is here, which is related to actually testing this model just in the way that I do for traditional videos on the channel. But something I want to highlight right here that's pretty cool, because folks can draw inspiration from this or use this as a springboard to see the capabilities of this agent, is the gallery section right here. So when we click on this, we can then minimize the left toolbar there. We can see that there's really like just a bunch of specific things we can pull from. And again, as I had previously mentioned, MiniMax is very well regarded for its aesthetic design capability. So a lot of the websites it's capable of generating tend to look pretty aesthetically pleasing, and we can see that they're predominantly featured right here in the gallery under recommended, and each one of these we can also remix, which would allow us to use this as a sort of blueprint for our own website, but then change the name to one's own specific use case and things of the sort. I do kind of like this Swiss architecture website design. I'll just click view details to see what this is, where we can see the prompt that specifically led to this design being created as well, and we can see it is now starting. And keep in mind, we're just using this through the web right now to see what's going on, and this shows us how MiniMax is kind of working agentically, because this is just replaying the specific result that led to this generation, where we see right here. Now, something that's really useful about even just the web design capabilities of this agent are that it gives us a little preview link for it, so we can actually go and see how it would look as if it were deployed live, which can be very useful in just getting a feel for the things. It's very interesting how the color in this specific generated result is very black and white, which seemingly is quite fitting of the stylistic depiction of this prompt being like a Swiss design firm. And then we have the little created by MiniMax agent down here, where inevitably I will have placed my head in the video, so we'll have to work around that. But this just shows a very simple look at some of the design capabilities that MiniMax is touted for. Here we see that I had it make a nonprofit website for something called the Beep Boop Collective, which it had to go ahead and figure out what the heck that would even be, because I gave it no additional information, and this is what it made. Really, it was actually kind of funny because it just went ahead and made this STEM education robotic website, which was very fitting of the Beep Boop Collective name. So it's just cool to see some of the capabilities. And again, this is one of those preview links that we get to look at the website natively when it has been created. But now we're going to hop back to the desktop application, and we'll look at experts and see some of the capabilities that can be enhanced when we have it running on our local system. One of the first things I'd like to take a look at being in the desktop application now is the experts feature. And we can see over here in the left-hand taskbar, there is also an option to select explore experts, but we also see that there are a few specific ones listed on the bottom. And I'd like to begin to showcase this just by actually showcasing one doing something agentically on our machine. And for that, I think the tidy folder expert is going to come in handy because I do have a relatively kind of unkempt folder on the system that this would be a very good candidate to tidy up for us. So with our expert selected, we can see we're essentially brought into a chat window where we're using this specific expert as listed by the name right here, and then a little subheading describing to us some specifics of this expert. Although I think in this case, it's pretty self-explanatory what this is and what it does without needing to read through the additional information here. But it does mention that it uses some safety conscientious methods to perform these actions, being that cleaning up files on a system has to be done properly to avoid mishaps. So they talk about creating compressed backups before cleanup, using move commands instead of delete commands, ensuring data safety. Now with that, I'm just going to give this access to the specific folder I would like it to clean. And the cool thing about this and speaking with these specific experts is you can do it through natural language. So this just lowers the barrier of entry in terms of using things like this, where perhaps historically this would be more of a command line focused thing, or you would manually just have to drag and drop and move things around through the file browser. This will automate that, but still using natural language to instruct it on how to perform its actions. To begin my folder tidying, I'm going to select the folder that I actually want this to work in, which is not the created projects folder that gets made when we download this desktop app, but instead is just my entire documents folder because there's a bunch of different types of files in there, and this will just showcase us simply the ability of this to clean and tidy said files up. So with that, we now have our specific folder that we'd like to have our expert work in selected, and in natural language we can just tell it what we want it to do. And we can see I've given this a very vague prompt saying clean this folder up, organized by file types, etc. Basically telling it just clean this in the way that you see fit. Now that we've done that, we will click go ahead right here, and it will begin to get to work, and we'll get some feedback as well while it does work. And as we see, this culminates in giving us a list of suggested organization options we have, and it allows us to choose any one of these or do something entirely different, being that this is kind of a demonstration folder I've put together in wanting to have this function and tidy it up. I think I'm going to allow it to just proceed with all of these, where basically it says, okay, we'll create like organized folders for different file types. So instead of a bunch of different ones, they'll go into the folder that they are corresponding to, meaning the video files will go into videos. Pretty self-explanatory and simple. Beyond that, the empty folder it found, it can move to trash because there's nothing in it. So it is kind of just a waste of space. R1 project. So it's moving all of the R1 related files together, which are kind of listed scattered around there. So that's nice to see that it understands the symbolic link between them and puts them in their own main folder. Then create recordings to move the 5 timestamped videos. I find this rather interesting, and this is a cool kind of test of capabilities because it knows there are video files in there, which it is going to put in the videos folder, but it also understood that there were screen recordings based on the timestamps listed in the file names, and it has opted to put those in a separate recordings folder. So that's actually pretty good to see, just some intelligence there instead of just lumping them all in the video files. And then it ends saying, okay, what should we do right here? And I like that it's putting, like it mentions build instructions DIY, so it knows what specifically these things are based on the file name, separate or in a tutorials folder. I'm just going to say all, and it will then go ahead and turn our documents folder into a much cleaner space. And before we select all, I do just want to show the documents folder as it currently exists right here, so we can see it's kind of messy and scattered around. And now with that, as I send all, it will then clean everything up in our folder. And something cool to see, and what kind of differentiates like a model working in an agentic fashion versus not, is we can see it encountered a little hiccup here where it's saying the backup is producing too much output because tar is with V, this V flag meaning verbose. Let me run it without the verbose flag to reduce output, and then it's doing it once again without that flag just to kind of bypass the hiccup that it encountered. And that's kind of in the scope of what like agentic functioning is if it encounters a speed bump or a roadblock, it doesn't just stall and fail, it understands what it has encountered and then thinks of a way to work around it, which is exactly what we see right here, and is probably like a decent, quick, simple explanation of how a model working agentically can be thought of. Excellent, all files moved successfully. Now let me clean up the empty folder, which was just named untitled folder, so we can get rid of that. The cleanup is completed. Your documents folder has been successfully organized, and now we get the summary of our newly organized and tidied folder, thanks to our tidy folder expert. And we see that everything in that previously rather dirty folder is now just nice and cleaned up. So let's just clean up by name, and all of these will now be snapped into a nice organized documents folder thanks to our tidy expert. Now I'd like to click on the Explore Experts button right here, where we see a bunch of other additional experts like the folder organization one we just ran, and there are a variety of different authors for these, so we see some of them are created by MiniMax and some of them are created by the community, and there's just a bunch of different ones here for a variety of different tasks. Now, in wanting to test this more in my own way, I would like to just hop over to the Create button up here in the top right, because this will allow us in natural language to create our own expert, which can then help us perform a specific task. And we see right here even, you can say something like, and then it just gives simple one-sentence prompts in natural language for what we want our expert to do. And truthfully, I kind of have to think through the best way to phrase this, because for the specific expert we are going to be creating, we need to go back into our newly organized documents folder right here, and we're going to click on this one, which is TalkBuddy. So this is essentially a little chatbot that I built. There are STL files, there are instruction manuals, as well as software, and I'm going to need an expert that can look at this folder, understand this is a product, and then use some reference from what it learns in here to actually create a sales page for this specific little TalkBuddy device. So I need to think of the best way to word that in simple, plain English. And truthfully, this probably isn't the best prompt, but I think that actually highlights one of the cooler things here is it's not even a great prompt I gave it. It was kind of a rambling of thoughts in my head and what I wanted, but it will go ahead and create the expert according to our specifications right here. And now with the agent complete, we just get simple explanations on how to actually use it, starting a new session with it, giving it the specific documents that we wanted to analyze to create this sales website, and then it just tells us the specific steps the agent will take in this task, which are basically the things we wanted it to when coming up with the natural language prompt. So now I'm going to hop over to where we see our agent right here, the technical product designer. Credits are used during testing, that's fine. Create, and then only me. I think for now I'm going to be selfish and just create this expert for only myself. So I apologize for my selfishness there, but now we can go ahead and click on this and we will be able to start a chat with our newly created expert, which will then have the sub-agent document understanding capabilities. And I will now give it access to the specific folder for our project, which is of course the TalkBuddy application, Trust Workspace. So we do have to give it permission that it does trust it. And now I need to actually think how I should specifically phrase this, keeping in mind that this expert does have some understanding of what its goal will be, so I don't need to reiterate the prompt that I used to create said expert. I just need to kind of tell it simply what I want it to do. So I'm giving it a really simple plain English prompt where I'm telling it to create a beautiful product website for the product contained in these folders, a digital desktop chatbot kit, use the real images for the website. Now this is likely going to take a little bit of time for the completed result that will culminate from doing this, but while it does go on, we can at least start by looking at a few specific things that it picks up on based on the context of what it finds within this folder. So we see right here it's currently immersed in discovering or immersed in the directory to understand this chatbot kit, focusing on documentation, image assets, etc. It needs to find the value proposition, which is very good. We can see right here that we have the doc analyzer, so this is essentially just kind of giving us a bit of information and it's prompting itself in how to do this website. So you're an expert technical product designer. Your task is to create a beautiful high converting product sales website for the desktop chat buddy, and it keeps going to the bottom here when it does update with something it's doing. We can see currently in the current process it's just listing out all the files that it sees within this folder, including the STL files, which are the 3D print files. It's now looking at the Python script that runs this, and I should make note in case it does show here like GPT 3.5. This was made a while ago, so I do believe this is still just using GPT 3.5, which was ChatGPT just from the original instructions for this specific chatbot. And we can see that it does list the specific PDFs here as well. So really we're going to just let it run for a little while and do what it needs to do, but the culmination of this will be kind of an agentically created product website based off of a specific folder on our system containing a lot of pertinent details about our product. And we can start to see here throughout its process that it is coding the specific website for our product. So we get a partial look at some of the code that it is generating here in the current process window. And after a little bit of time, we see right here, it has analyzed the product documentation, images, and software assets and created a professional product sales website for TalkBuddy. We have some features, but to be honest with you, I'm just excited to see it. So let's open this preview link right here and see our generated website. That looks quite all right. To be honest with you, it did some decent purplish theme. We do have a little robot emoticon for the TalkBuddy website here as well. And the important thing is it actually used the images from within our folder to do this all. So this is cool. And specifically, before we even look at this website, this kind of highlights the desktop agent or even co-working functionality, in which this is something that was just existing in a file on our computer. It is an actual product. I did make it myself. It's not like some random thing I ripped from the internet, but it just basically, like, from this app, we were able to point it to a local folder on our computer, say, hey, I need you to go ahead and just basically build this into a product website to sell what I have created. And honestly, like 5-10 minutes, done. And now we have a live website right here, which we can then iterate upon and ask for changes. Maybe say, okay, I don't want like purple, make it like gray or something. Not something I would say, but let's take a peek at it right here. So if we scroll down, we do see that we have a bit of pertinent information, and these are all things that it will have pulled from its ability to actually analyze the file structure and read the files within the specific folder to learn, okay, this is a 3D printed project. It has a Raspberry Pi. Python is what it runs on, and it gives you real-time chat capabilities. These do have decent hover effects on them as well, but this is cool because we gave it no pertinent information about this TalkBuddy thing. We just said it's a desktop chat robot. We didn't say it's 3D printable. We didn't say it uses a Raspberry Pi, Python. We did tell it was a chatbot, but the other things here were things it pulled just by looking through the folder. And if we scroll down right here, smart interface powered by Pygame. Okay, I'm very impressed with what I see right here, where it has this little listening, kind of the way it's zooming in and out there. Speaking of such, let me zoom in a little on this website, because do you see the hover in and out effect, at least the brightness there, and the volume bar is showing listening? This is actually pretty cool, and it does show in a circular way. So it cropped the headshot to a circle, which is cool because it learned that there's a circular display in this. That photo that I gave it was not cropped in a circle. This photo that it has right here was actually from within one of the assets folder. So if we go in right here into the software folder, we can see that this PNG photo that it cropped in a circle is not actually a circle. So it understood to crop it that way because of the design of the device. That's quite thorough. I'm actually kind of impressed by that. We can see right here, example personality config. It gives us a code snippet here. I'm actually, to be honest with you, I'm very impressed with what I see so far. Not just because like the design of the site, but the intricacy in which it actually really like fine-toothed went in and learned about this product to use it here. I'm impressed with this. We have lip sync animation, custom personalities, and it even gives the little code snippet for the custom personality. But the thoughtfulness to actually see it circular and apply that mask over the image here is not something I would have expected. From parts to partner. Step 1, print and prepare. Download the STLs and print on any standard printer. Step 2, assemble the hardware, mount the Pi, connect the Waveshare screen and audio hat. And again, it's just using the three of the 4 stock photos that we gave it in the directory. Install software, and then we have another image. I did take a breath because I think I kind of got excited, but and then at the bottom we see, okay, we have our project bill of materials, our computer, our display, which is that round touch screen, the audio, which is this audio hat and speakers, Raspberry Pi power adapter, and hardware, M3 screws and nuts, M2 screws, and a 3mm hex key. That is correct, and it will have learned that from some of the setup guides and PDFs, and the optional Arduino add-on, which is true, because it is optional to have head movement or not. And these are the correct specific bill of materials we would need for the Arduino. And then we see down here we have a little GitHub logo. We can close out of the created by MiniMax agent. That wouldn't really like point to anything currently, but that's a placeholder for the code to be linked to. Open source hardware at the bottom. I have to say, I'm quite impressed with this website because of the depth in which it went to learn about this product that was just a folder on our system, and we told it in one sentence what it was, and then it learned all of this about it. So this is a really interesting and cool demonstration of like what I suppose the whole desktop agent thing is. And when they say it's like a super intelligent AI assistant on your computer or intern, this is kind of like the culmination of that. So we have our whole expert demonstration here, and I don't really think we're going to be able to beat that because that was really cool, and it was something that I had on my personal system that I've created that I was able to get this to work with. Again, we can go back in here and see there's a bunch of other ones like the landing page builder, the tidy folder, which we tried as well, video story generator. But really, I wanted to try this with a expert that was created for a specific purpose that kind of pertains to something on my own system, and keeping in mind with this agent and the functionality. I do see one other expert here that seems somewhat interesting. This knowledge digestion converts textbooks or PDFs into personalized multimodal interactive learning materials, supporting handwritten notes, quiz, web pages, slides, and output formats. And it has a bunch of sub-agents here as well. I might actually try this real quick with the same directory because there were a ton of PDFs in there as well. So I'll say turn these PDFs into a interactive learning material, and we'll see in what format it returns that to us. Received. I'm now working on converting the PDFs into interactive learning materials. And again, I'm not quite sure what it's going to give us as the culmination of this task, but I'm rather curious to see, and we see it understands, okay, there's 5 PDFs in here before I should ask the user about, okay, so it seems like it may have some follow-up questions for us, which it does right here. What's your grade, skill level, waiting for your command, PhD, and I want the interactive quiz website. I also said as well as the mind map and slides. I don't necessarily know what those, well, slides, I do know what slides are, but I'm not 100% sure what a mind map is, so we'll see what it does here. It's interesting, so we can see what it's doing right here where we see this image prompt. It's generating images as we see this visual structure generator. So this is an image prompt for what it's generating as an image to kind of help this educational material. So look, we can see just a quick overview of what was generated right there, which looks fairly intricate. And I see a bunch of GPIO pins, which are very pertaining to this specific device. So this is definitely going all out here, and I'm interested to see the culmination of all of these results. All right, so we see all our interactive learning materials have been successfully generated. We've received an 18-question interactive quiz covering all 5 knowledge domains with PhD level technical depth, which is a little concerning. Mind map, a visual overview, cross-domain relationships, available as image and editable mermaid text, and we have 9 slides. All files are saved in your specific folder. Open this in any web browser to see the interactive assessment. Okay, so we have our learning materials folder here that it just created for us and placed everything here inside of it. Wow, I think I want to start with the quiz.html. So we have a very kind of like educational focused interactive quiz. So, all right, I'm going to do the whole quiz. Mechanical assembly and hardware integration. The torque coupling between the neck mount and the big gear is critical for rotational motion transfer. Given the 28 BYJ48 provides 2048 steps per revolution, the gear train introduces 1-to-1 ratio. What is the theoretical angular resolution per step at the neck output? From a mechanical engineering perspective, what is the primary reason for using longer fasteners in these specific applications? I'm going to zoom in more on this. Question 3. Okay, we have a true or false. In the TalkBuddy assembly documentation, M3 lock nuts are specified for the big gear retention to prevent loosening under rotational load, while standard hex nuts are used for the small gear installation. All right, I'm not finishing this quiz. This is ridiculous. This is overcomplicated. Well, I got a 4 out of 18. Review required. Thanks. I got a 22% on a quiz based on the product that I myself designed and programmed from scratch. That is quite depressing. All right, well, that was a very good educational experience. Very humbling. Okay, now let's just forget about all that. We have a bunch of mind map stuff. I think maybe I'll just take a look at the slides it created first. TalkBuddy, good God. Interactive, AI-powered interactive robot system. And again, when we saw that there were image generation prompts, this is what it was creating. So Raspberry Pi audio hat, circuit boards, TalkBuddy, and it didn't do these based on these specific images of the product, but system architecture, mechanical assembly. It has even the fastener reference chart right here. Electronics integration, that's a really good photo for a GPIO map. Linux audio system, wow, and then we have like a stack of everything that's going on right here. This is really intricate. Here's our workflow, 56 pages, 44 assembly steps, technical specifications, software, and it has the dependencies listed out like this, the specific hardware, the stepper motor, the motor driver board, the audio hat, and then the screen. Key constants, wow. Now, our last thing would be the mind map, and I think we're just going to look at the photo of the mind map for this. Very cool. Okay, so this is a mind map, and now I know. TalkBuddy project teaches us Arduino programming, and here are sub-intricacies, sub-information. I'm still upset at how poorly I did on the test of my own product, but that's okay. Linux and Raspberry Pi configuration, and the specific sub-steps that are within that scope. Electronics integration, and then GPIO programming, SDA, SCL, 5-volt ground, okay. Mechanical assembly, torque coupling, mounting posts, tools, requirements, cable routing, fasteners, and a 2-gear gearbox mechanism, which is true. AI integration, OpenAI API, speech recognition, GTTS, which is correct, Python dependencies, such as these, and personality configurations. This was a really impressive result. If you had something you needed to study for, this would be very, very good at creating study material based off of, like, I basically gave it a folder of a product which had some PDFs in it pertaining to said product, like a setup guide and other information, and it created this extremely intricate experience in which I scored a 22% on my own quiz after skipping many of the questions due to anger. That was very good. That was very good. So honestly, that's going to conclude our first look and test of the recently released MiniMax Agent Desktop. This was very impressive, I do have to say, because we tested its ability to really go into fine-grained file structure and look and learn things about specific things, in this case our product that we used for our demonstration, and it did a fantastic job of picking things out. I was really impressed with some of the considerations that went into this website, in specific actually applying a circular mask to this face image, knowing that the screen that's used is round. In addition to that, there was some nice little hover effect on the listening animation right here. I loved this little text snippet for the example personality config, and it properly utilized all of these sample images that I placed in here, which there were only 4 of, and it learned all of these 3 things at least right here because we didn't give it any pertinent information about what this was. We just said it's a desktop chat buddy, so it would have perhaps understood this, but it wouldn't have known that it's using GPT 3.5, which, because this is such an old product, that is what the script is still using. And we have the Python brain, Raspberry Pi core, and 3D printable, all of these things, and the point of all this is it learned these things by agentically looking and exploring through the file structure, reading the files, looking at the folder structure even, and making those, understanding, if you will. It's just quite neat. Then, of course, we tried the educational expert, which apparently I am not, with the interactive learning about our product. And again, it really made some rather interesting things here. The PowerPoint, the mind map, they were all quite well done. It even gave us the PowerPoint file for these slides as well. The mind map was interesting, being something that I wasn't even 100% sure what this was, and now, oh, okay, so this is a mind map. That makes sense. It basically just shows us all of the domains covered with this specific product. And then it also gave us that quiz website, which we don't need to pay too much mind to, but it was rather PhD level because I did tell it that. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I think the video demonstration did a lot of talking for what I would generally speak about in the outro for a video. MiniMax is pretty neat. The Agent Desktop is quite useful and can be fun to play with depending on how you want it to go and perform actions. Obviously, we could have given it a much funnier product if we wanted to, but I wanted to keep it somewhat educational for this demonstration. So that's going to conclude today's video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.